I just love St. Paul pork products. In fact, I love them so much. I work here now.
Oh, God.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Suspenders of Belief. This episode is brought to you by Lehman Furniture Store, your all-American source for Mexican imported furniture.
Hey, everybody. This is Heavy.
This is Traby.
And today we watched Drop Dead Gorgeous. Where do you even start with this movie?
It is a mockumentary. The very dry type of comedy style that's much like The Office is probably the most relevant example I can think of, or Community, or any of those sitcoms that are like that. But I tend to think of Christopher Guest movies. But more specifically, this movie is set around a beauty pageant in a small town, and it covers the different contestants and what their lives are like and everything. But the real twist on the idea is that some of these contestants are, well, dropping dead. They are having mysterious accidents, and the idea seems to be that the competition is being eliminated so that maybe a certain contestant will be the actual winner. The tone of it is very much a dark comedy as well. I feel like it's a 13. If it's an R, it's a very soft R. It almost feels sometimes like it's trying to say something about like destiny versus like intention, because like everything works out in Amber's favor.
I will say the one thing about the movie in and of itself, the black comedy, sometimes that's used as an umbrella to kind of excuse offensiveness for offensive sake. And I am kind of curious where this movie rides that line sometimes, where I don't know if it's more of a stylistic choice or a lazy choice. Both the black comedy and, ironically, the mockumentary, this way we can make fun of people and present it in a way that, no, this is just really how they are, but we're really just like, no, this is not how they are at all. We're going to do an overly stereotypical, characteristic version of them. And again, I'm not from Minnesota. I have absolutely no idea what it's like in Minnesota. So my only interpretation is what you see in movies anyways. Maybe somebody who's from the North watching King of the Hill would feel, is this really what Texas is like? Or is this just a cartoon? Like I kind of had that detachment where it was hard to be critical on some elements of it because it was so detached from anything that I know about.
It is a kind of hyper reality. And I think that helps. I've seen people criticize the tone for being a little too over the top. Like it's not subtle enough, it's not dry enough. But since it is almost a cartoon in how some of the performances are, it's fine. Like it's you're willing to accept some of the weird things and the weird acting choices and things like that, just based off of the title of the show, Suspension of Disbelief. There, just a little bit. The black comedy stuff is definitely intentional. I don't feel like it grew like organically out of it, especially since we're talking about like the whole point of the ideas that people are dead. Like dark comedy doesn't necessarily have to be about being offensive or anything like that, because like you're making a joke about somebody dying.
I will say the one thing that jumped out to me, and I don't know specifically who to say like where the disconnect really came from, but whether from like the screenwriting to the adaptation to film, whether it's a directorial choice, but I really feel like there was a disconnect between original mindset, like how the story was written, and then like finished product of what we got, because it does have kind of this tonal inconsistency. The idea is great. The idea that it's a beauty pageant contest and the contestants are being killed off, and the fact that like no one seems to really care, like that's so hilarious to me. Nobody seems to care about these people's death whatsoever. The contestants that die, no one seems to take it very seriously. No one seems to care about it. There's not a lot of weight to it. They're just gone and then immediately forgotten about. Even the character who we see a lamp fall on her head, and I guess we're supposed to presume she's dead. They reference her. Oh, has anybody seen her in the hospital? Oh yeah, she's really, really happy. Oh, I heard that, she had some kind of brain damage. Yeah, but she's totally deaf now and she couldn't be happier. And everyone's like, oh, that's so great. So there's moments like that that are like, okay, that's a writing joke. That's very much a scripted, very, very clearly dark, intentional joke. And then there were times in the movie where I didn't know if it was, again, that's where it comes down to, I don't know if it's intentional or not. And I looked up the director. This is his only directorial film.
No, I know this one wasn't super successful, so it doesn't shock me that he didn't make anything else. You go to director jail sometimes after movies like this.
Yeah, I think its gross was like $10 million and it had a budget of 10 to 15 million. So you could say it broke even, maybe a little loss, but
by now with DVD sales, maybe. It was recently put on Hulu in like 2019, and there was a lot of attention drawn to it then. So they may have been able to recoup some of that through like Hulu, and it was kind of revealed as being a little bit of a cult following for it, which makes sense because it's just unusual.
Well, you mentioned a couple of the actresses because you have Kirstie Allen, you have Kirsten Dunst, you have Denise Richards. You also have Amy Adams in her first role. This is her first movie that she appeared in. And so she's very, very young, but still recognizable. And what's fun about Amy Adams is, again, kind of like on The Office, I think her experience being a cheerleader helped her get this role, because in some of the, I guess you call it stunt choreography of her character she's doing.
You're probably right. There's talking about somebody having an edge to help them. Denise Richards is in this movie, and she is not necessarily the best actress. However, the character that she's portraying is meant to be a little fake anyway.
Right.
She's meant to be just a little bit off.
I was going to say this is probably the best performance I've ever seen of Denise Richards, and I wasn't sure who to give credit for that. If it was a line producer, somebody who's kind of coaching her. Okay, because like you said, the way that she delivers the lines are so terrible, but so perfect for what her character is like. Okay, you've been coached your whole life. These are the answers you're going to give. This is the way you're going to spin any question related about home. Make it about Minnesota. Make it about the small town, where you can just feel the fakeness. And it just oozes out of every fake smile she gives and every dumb little like head turn. And it's great. She does a fantastic job.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Lehman. And I believe this pageant is an important experience for every young woman, my mother, because she could solve world hunger with one of her blue ribbon rhubarb pies, create world peace with one of her prayers, and still find time to look beautiful.
But yeah, for the most part, every bit of dialogue that she's delivering is meant to be just off.
I will say that, like my mom says every Sunday, come and get it, bitch. Like, I love to imagine her mom says the full, it's not just, it's dinner time, come and get it, but it's dinner time, come and get it, bitch.
Like that, bitch. Yeah.
That's how her mom just addresses her for Sunday dinners.
The movie, I quote it often. There's so many little things in there that are just so great. And when I was younger, when this came out when I was like 14, and I probably saw it at like 14, 15, because I feel like I feel like I watched it in the 90s, and if it came out in 99, I must have rented it as soon as it came out on DVD.
I can't imagine it was in theater for very long.
Some of the stuff I like better as a teenager, like and that's the case with a lot of these like deadpan, drier, mockumentary style things. Like I watched Spinal Tap as a kid and didn't really get it at all. I had to watch it as an adult and be like, oh, now I understand. And it's like that with this movie. And conversely, I brought up Dumb and Dumber when we were talking about it before too. Dumb and Dumber, you laugh at the overt things, and like with this movie, you laugh at the guy who's mentally handicapped, and you make fun of him all the time when you're 14. And as an adult now, my favorite lines are like the way more subtle ones, like when they're just having a conversation and they just make one little thing, and there's so much to read out of that sentence. So when somebody says something, and you're like, you put it together in your head, and it's much funnier. Or even better yet, like there's some mundane dialogue happening in the foreground, and in the background something kind of funny is happening. For years, I've watched this movie. I've seen the scene where Amy Adams is making out with one of the wrestlers backstage.
Right.
My brain, oh, that's her boyfriend. No, her boyfriend's in the audience. He's the extreme one that's got his chest painted. I just only realized that in this viewing. I'm like, wait, he was in the audience. He wasn't the wrestler. That was just some dude she was making out with. So little things like that are just very subtle. You have to be paying attention to pick up. Like as an adult, I appreciate that a lot more. If you look at like the trailer for it, it makes it look kind of dumb. It was probably of poor taste in 99, but like in 2000 we had Scary Movie in that whole sea of those epic movies, and I feel like people want to equate this like that for some reason. Like, it's just like a dumb broad comedy where they're just going to make fun of whatever. And this is a lot more subtle. I give it a lot more credit than that.
Well, something that just kind of occurred to me on why this movie, particularly when it was released, might not have performed as well as it did. Because remember, this came out in the summer of 99. Do you remember what happened in April of 99?
Yeah, Columbine, yeah.
That was a thought that happened as I was watching the movie, where it's like, death, and they're killing because they don't like people. Isn't that funny? Like, it was in the back of my head, I was like, this feels like it would not be well received immediately after the Columbine shooting happened, and that was fresh in the public's, mindset.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, situationally, it's not exactly the same, but the implication throughout the whole movie is that it's another student killing other students in a high school type setting. So yeah, I can kind of see that. I never would have thought of that.
Well, you also have because again, it has this mockumentary style where the camera crew is clearly doing more detective work than anyone else in the film.
Yeah.
But like you have shots where they'll cut to the sheriff and they'll be like, "Have you investigated this? What's going on?" And the sheriff is like, "Oh, that was just bad wiring." And I was like, "Okay, clearly they've been bought off because they're not even trying to do any kind of actual police work."
After some thorough investigating, we determined that the Curry girl must have been smoking and driving.
But it did feel like the camera crew was supposed to be like almost a morality compass that the movie seemed to lack.
Yeah.
Like the camera crew was more real than anyone on film.
Yeah, that I was thinking about that last scene where you see the producer or whoever being interviewed by the local TV affiliate is the most that the camera crew or anybody says from that end. And it's just like, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And it's like, well, is it a comment on the entire movie and not just that one event?
Well, speaking of so much going on, one thing that immediately hit me as I was trying to just take in the movie, because it was my first time watching this, was just the number of characters. There were just an insane number of characters. I mean, even just trying to think of, okay, number one, that's the Kirsten Dunst. Her name's Amber something. Okay, number two, number three, number four, number five, number six, number seven. We got to number 9, and I was like, how am I possibly going to remember any of these people?
And then almost, that's why I was like, don't worry, because immediately they started dropping like flies.
We also have like Amy Adams and Britney Murphy, and those are characters that you would assume that like, okay, they're not going to play just nobody characters because they're too big of actresses. But at the time, no one knew who Amy Adams was.
Right. Yeah. I knew Britney Murphy because of Clueless. I may not have even known that she was on King of the Hill at that time. It's obvious because her voice is almost identical to how she plays Luann. She's just a little more Southern with Luann. But I might have realized that as a kid, but mostly I didn't.
Well, her voice and her character and her performance, or I could just imagine Luann going in a beauty pageant contest. Like it feels just like Luann. She would have Bucky backstage making out with him. It's just like, this is just Luann.
Britney Murphy is awesome, and we lost her way too soon.
It was definitely kind of overshadowed her performance as well, because every time I saw her, there was just a twinge of sadness.
Do you like to swim?
Oh, yeah, I love to swim. When I was in New York, I met Greg Louganis at one of my brother's shows. Yeah.
Conversely, seeing Kirsten Dunst in this is she's pretty impressive, I think, because I was thinking about that before we watched it. Like, Denise Richards is a terrible actress, and that plays well into her character, and Kirsten Dunst plays it, I think, pretty naturalistically for what she's trying to do. And at this point, we'd seen Small Soldiers was a year before this. Bring It On is very close to this. Was that 2000 maybe?
I believe it's just after this.
Very, very close. So, and obviously, like Interview with the Vampire and anything else that she may have been in beforehand.
Interview with the Vampire would have been a couple years before, because she was very young in that one.
There's so many people. There's you have the actress who was Frau in the Austin Powers movies, looking almost the same. I remember noticing that because I was a big fan of Austin Powers when this came out. Of course, Kirstie Alley. I knew her from, like you were talking about, like Look Who's Talking. This is almost entirely female cast. Most of the male characters are more plot necessary. They're not really characters as much as they are functional. And I don't know if that had something to do with it necessarily. It's not like, we can't have movies with women leading it. There's plenty of movies that have been successful with women in it. So I don't think that's the case, but it's something that I observed. I was like, I never thought about that, but it is like almost entirely female driven.
It does make you wonder from a marketing perspective if this was one of those movies that they kind of made it a little edgier, they kind of made it a little darker with the intent to bring in a male audience, but because it was, look at the graphic we have.
Yeah.
I really feel like if it had been a little bit more of a whodunit, a little bit more of, like they really were dropping like flies. Like maybe you started off with like this huge ensemble cast, and by the end of the contest, it really is just 2 people left that are alive because everyone else has died. If there was a little more to it, because it feels like that's the plot, like the 15-minute mark and somebody's dead, and you're like, whoa, this is going to get, really serious. But then it just kind of doesn't, and it's a little strange. I wonder why they didn't, ramp that up, as opposed to kind of occasionally it feels like, oh, maybe it's sabotage. Next story beat.
It does make me feel like there were some changes to the script, because the revelation, that spoiler alert, that it's actually Kirstie Alley is the one that's been murdering everybody, not Denise Richards, isn't really that much of a twist. Because even when I was watching it this time, I was trying to be objective. I was like, what do I think? If I was going in cold, I think they're in it together. So obviously there's some level of orchestration between the mom and the daughter. So I didn't, when it's revealed, oh, it was just the mom. It's like, oh, okay. Like, it's not a tremendous reveal. And I'm wondering if it was always intended to be a little more confusing and it meant to be a mystery with maybe a higher body count. And then they just had to either due to budget or creative changes or whatever, ended up making the version that we have now.
The one thing about the reveal that I thought was kind of odd was it was very clearly setting up Becky. She's, the great marksman. Look at her shooting the thing. Oh, this person got shot between the eyes. Oh, what a strange accident. So it was like they were doing that Scooby-Doo reveal where there's the creepy old, obviously we're supposed to suspect him person. So my first thought was like, okay, well, it's not Becky. Then who is it? And so there was a part of the film where I was trying to think of who do I most medium suspect, as Dwight would say.
Yeah.
The murders have been so specific. Like the one who she wins everything she enters being blown up immediately.
Everyone says this is a big accident. She got iced because she wins everything, and this time someone didn't want her to win.
It's dark and hilarious, but I get why that one would be the first target to go. But the second one was just a boyfriend who spurned Becky's advances.
Yeah, it wasn't even tied to the pageant whatsoever. Yeah.
Becky could have killed him, I guess, but like that felt weird. And then when the dress went missing and she went to the mom of like, oh, can I perform in this pageant? My outfit got stolen. And she's like, nope, sorry.
I'm gonna do my talent tonight.
Oh, really? I don't think so.
Clearly it's her.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about that first scene where we have Denise Richards holding the gun. My mom gave me this gun when I was 13, and then she's holding the rifle after the reveal of the guy's been shot. Like, oh, that's so strange, but hunting's a dangerous thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but she got the gun from her mom, and her mom taught her how to shoot. So clearly her mom is a good marksman too.
Yeah.
Becky is engulfed by the swan. I guess, spoiler again.
Spoiler alert.
I was so just confused because then it was like, okay, but if someone else is murdering people, how did they get gasoline on the swan? Why is there gasoline on the swan? And then that never gets answered.
Well, that's just it. That was genuinely an accident. Because like I said, I feel like thematically part of the movie is like you have the machinations of Kirstie Alley, who is trying her best to structure everything around so that her daughter can be the winner of the pageant, while Fate steps in and being like, no, it's Amber. At a certain point, Fate takes over.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they blow up the house, the dress survived. The dress, that seems like it's Fate from Amber's perspective, but in reality, some pervert stole the dress out of her closet, and when everything blows up, he gives it back to her, and that's why it was still on the hanger.
In some kind of weird miracle, our neighbor boy, Kenny Hansen, found my tap costume on the roof of their trailer while he was setting coon traps for his dad. Here's the weird part. It was still on the hanger.
The swan blowing up is Fate stepping in once again. That was just because of poor craftsmanship. They were making a statement about the crappy Mexican craftsmanship of that swan. That's what they kept saying it over and over again.
I don't know, like the gasoline comment, it was a little too on the nose, which made me think that there was a bigger plot, at least at some point, where everyone was trying to kill each other, where there were multiple schemers in play. Because the giant just temper tantrum she throws of, oh, it was me and I was all behind it. It feels so slapped in.
Yeah.
As that reveal was happening, it's like, well, obviously she wasn't blowing up her own daughter, so who blew up her daughter? Like I was just frustrated at that point.
No, that was intended to be just, it definitely feels like they didn't know exactly how to end it. That's why the movie has like 3 endings and it doesn't quite fit. I love the nihilistic ending of the damn company goes bankrupt before they can finish the pageant. I love that, but that's not necessarily satisfying. That's why that actual epilogue shows what, where are they now kind of thing, and they show what happens to Amber and everything is a little bit better than if they had just faded to black when she gets on the bus. It would have been like, wow, okay.
See, I'm glad you brought up the ending, because that was something that just seemed so strange. Like as soon as the daughter blows up, we get the reveal that it was the mom, and she's now crowned, and she's like, this isn't what I wanted. And the surrogate mother figure is just like, you know what? Sometimes, good things happen to good people. Really? No.
That's a lot of shit, yeah.
Just be happy. But there's a nice end to tie off the film. But the movie goes on for another 20 minutes after that point.
Yeah.
And I remember as we're watching it, I was, why? Why is this movie still going? The story is done.
Yeah.
Because even if you wanted to have that epilogue scene of the mother breaking out, the shootout, all of that, if you wanted to do it, you could have just done it right then.
You could have right there, yeah.
Because everything after that didn't need to happen, because you could cut off that last 20 minutes and nothing changes. The story doesn't need any of that.
I'd be curious I've never watched this with a commentary or anything like that, but it'd be interesting to watch it with the director's commentary and see what they were thinking about it, because it is It is odd. Even the first time I watched it as a kid, I was like, this is a weird way to end this movie. But one of the things that I do like about it is that it's a subversive kind of thing, not necessarily in a good way, but at least in a memorable way. Like, I always love that ending where they get off the thing and they're playing Beautiful Dreamer and the big foreclosed signs are all over the building. And all the beauty queens react violently to it, which is the over-the-top comedic thing. But the more subtle thing that I like is Amber just like sighs and turns around and gets right back on the bus. Is just like, fuck my life.
I do like that Amber was obsessed with Diane Sawyer the whole time. She constantly brings her up. And then there's that epilogue moment of she just immediately picks up I'm here, Amber, reporting the newscaster has recently been shot. They're currently treating her with medical expertise is on the scene. Giving it's just one of those like just without missing a beat, just steps in to be the news reporter. So it's like, okay, so clearly it's not just I like Diane Sawyer because she's pretty. Like she actually likes Diane Sawyer because of what she does. And it's like that was kind of funny because I did not see that coming. That kind of full circle of the character arc was like that was a nice little way to end the story. I like that much more so than her just like and she wins the pageant.
Yeah, it's very much a case of she is a down-on-your-luck character who has nothing going for her. She lives in a trailer with her mom. Her dad is a carny who left and never came back, and she has this opportunity to get out of this tiny, small town, and that's why she's jumping on this opportunity with this pageant. And she is very driven and very capable and clearly outclasses most of the other girls in the pageant, not just with her appearance and personality, but with like the talent. She genuinely can tap very well. Most of the other people's talents are non-existent. Like we never got to see what Britney Murphy was going to do. I think another dance number maybe, but
I did like Denise Richards. I was kept waiting for her talent to start.
Yeah,
and then she breaks out. Does she brings Jesus on a cross? Oh my god!
Dad lost his shit the first time we watched that. He was laughing so hard.
I was having trouble breathing, just getting oxygen into my lungs.
And then when she exits the stage, she puts the cross on her back, carries it off.
We talked about this just the other day, but Allison Janney, she won an Oscar for her performance on I, Tonya, where she played the mother. She won an Oscar for supporting actress, and she's one of those actresses that I've kind of seen in a bunch of different movies without realizing how many times I've seen her on screen, and she was fantastic in this movie. She was great. I would recommend watching this movie on her performance alone, even if every other actress who's in this, didn't already appeal to you. Her performance alone makes this movie worth watching.
Can one of you boys give me a ride home?
Don't fall for it. She lives 2 trailers down.
So, be real easy.
Go on home, Loretta.
Come on. Do you think a nice, cool minute help if I shoved your head up your ass? You're cute. Oh, I see you're married. You catch this in your mouth, I'll give you a present. All right, open wide. Oh, God, you got that on the first try. Come here. Oh, you are cute. I got some.
One of the things I noticed this time when watching it, you have the brother who is mentally handicapped, gets his overalls caught in the door of the truck and can't leave. And there's a scene where he's actively asking for help. And the documentary crew puts a little caption at the bottom that says that the spirit of true documentarianism, where you don't interfere with the subjects. And in the very next scene, they've established that the swan smells like gas, and Kirstie Alley goes to light the sparkler, and the camera's on her. She gets distracted and walks away, and you see the flames take hold and start to spread. And I was thinking to myself, oh, that's why they showed that bit right before, because the camera crew clearly sees that the thing is catching on fire. If they said, hey, that's on fire, she would have turned around and put it out. Now, they don't. That scene isn't necessarily very long, so I didn't notice it either, watching it multiple times. But this time I was like, okay, so they establish, not at the beginning of the movie, but right before it's important, that we're not supposed to interfere with anything. But they still had that scene of him yelling and asking for help. So I don't know when that decision was made to establish that right before they had the bit where it was caught. Maybe it was an editing thing.
I definitely think that it could have been a decision in post, but it wasn't the only time it was used, because if you remember, there was also the other pageant girl who mentioned Adam West, and there was also a caption that said Mr. West could not be reached for comment. So they did do that text thing at least more than once. So if it was done in post, it was not the only place where they thought it would be funny to insert a comment like that at the bottom.
One of the things I also noticed too was when Denise Richards is doing the dance with the Jesus on the cross, there's a shot of Allison Janney and Ellen Barkin like laughing their asses off at it. And it's fine character-wise, but it's one of those situations where you have to be careful when you're doing a comedy. You don't want your characters to laugh at your own jokes too much, because that can kind of undermine it. And if that is the type of thing that people would be critical of even at the time or now. Like, I can kind of understand that, because you have to kind of delicately balance that out. I feel like horror comedy works best when it's audience participation to some degree. Like, you have to make the connection in your head that it's funny. You don't need a laugh track telling you it's funny.
How much would you spend on this movie?
Yeah, I don't know that I would want to spend a $30 4K. Like, it doesn't need that high resolution. Don't need to spend that much money on it. But a $20 Blu-ray I would do. Yeah, I really like this movie.
For me, again, it was my first time taking it in, but it was one of those that, like, I don't know if I would spend money to go out of my way on it. So I'm probably more of, if I saw it in the bargain bin, the $5 price range, I'd probably pick it up to watch it again, but I don't know if I'd spend more than that on it.
I mean, it's a lot of nostalgia. I'll be biased. I'll be honest, I'm biased that way because I grew up watching it and I'm a big fan of it. So that's fair. And I think that we could both agree that the movie was at least funny, even if functionally it didn't really work very well in that last act. And some of the things didn't age well, especially coming from a 2021 perspective. So I could understand how somebody could watch this and hate it and never want to watch it again. Like, that's fair.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those type of things that they could definitely do this movie again, like do a reimagining of it, do a modern take on this film, and do it in a way that is, maybe it takes the deaths with a little bit more gravitas, a little bit more seriousness, and I think that might be better received, because the idea that you can have a dark comedy where it's just a beauty pageant, but people are literally murdering each other, maybe have it, instead of the deaths being the joke, have it like, no, we got to keep the beauty pageant going. We can't just stop having the beauty pageant because people are murdering. No, we've got to keep going. Like, have that be the joke. Like, treat the deaths with earnest and seriousness. People are genuinely concerned. Like, no, the people are dying. We can't keep going. But they're like, their families are like, no, you got to keep going. You got to win. Like, there's, I guess, a way to do it where you can kind of have a sensitivity toward the subject without it being disrespectful. It's hard. It's a hard line to walk.
Yeah. With
something like this, but I feel like, ultimately, I feel like that's what doesn't work in the movie. It doesn't balance that very well. It feels a little tasteless, and it's frustrating because I get the appeal, and I can understand. It's one of those that I think as a book works better. I think it works better on paper. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, it's better in script form.
I think it needs a tighter script, if nothing else. I'd like to cover more stuff like this too, like Last Action Hero or even Starship Troopers.
I do have a suggestion for our next movie review. If maybe you've heard of it. It's called Cyborg 2.
Yeah, we could do that next. That would be something that at least neither of us have seen before.
So coming up next on Suspenders of Belief, Cyborg 2, The Future Beware, The Soul is in the Software.
Oh no!